People who worked in restaurants, what was the worst customer that you had to deal with? Worked in a popular restaurant for a while. We usually have quite a long wait, 30-40 minutes waits during dinner service, and people are told by the hosts about this. There was this lady that got fed up with the wait after 10 minutes. She stormed into the restaurant, stood next to a table of 4 people and literally asked them, "Are you guys done? We've been waiting for a long time now and would like to have the table if you guys are just chatting." Was completely mind blown how people are able to not give a duck and pull something like this in public. What did the table say? "I have been seated at a 4-seat table when eating alone, and when there is a huge wait I often invite the people waiting to eat with me. Not like paying for them or anything, just sit and eat, so they don't have a half-hour wait. I once had an Olive Garden pasta par and everyone at my table would get free sodas and I would offer people to sit with me to save time and get free drinks. No one ever took me up on it. Sucks to be ugly." A customer ordered one of our daily specials and didn't like it, so instead of complaining to me about the food and letting me offer something else, she complained to my manager about me. This was May of last year. In August of last year, turns out she was one of my college professors for the semester, teaching a management course. She recognized me the first day, but I played it off like I didn't know her. Edit. She did not complain about me to my manager in front of me. I left to go work an event in a different building, and she left a sticky note for me after talking to my boss. I don't know what the sticky note said, since I didn't bother to read it. I had a similar experience. I served a couple once, and we got along really well. No complaints about anything. I ran the guy's card and it declined. I told my manager, and when he went to talk to them, they told him that I was a horrible server and treated them like chiz. They left me a penny. I'll never understand why people make their dislike for a restaurant's food into a bizarre personal grudge against the server. I worked at a place that had good food except for this one dish, steak frites. It was a small hanger steak, cut into strips, served with fries. That's it. The steak was always tough, under-seasoned, and wasn't a lot of food for the money. One day a guy asked me for some recommendations, so I made a couple. He apparently wasn't impressed by my suggestions, so he asked about the steak frites and said, explicitly, that I wouldn't recommend it. So that's what he ordered. After taking a couple of bites, he pushed the plate away, then asked me to call over the manager. He then complained to the manager, not directly about the food, but about me for giving him an awful recommendation. Barista here had a guy that regularly came in and ordered a complicated drink. He always finished the order by asking for a finger swirl in the drink. If you gave him a confused look, he would say, "Well, how else am I gonna taste you?" He was the worst. I'm constantly surprised at the gross creativity possessed by people dead set on sexual harassment. Oh god, I had a similar dude when I was in college. Said to me to stick my finger into the beer bottle so he could taste something sweet, mayo. I used to work in a bar that sold very old booze. A drunk man tried to impress his friends by chugging from a bottle of Mero from the early 60s. He had to pay for the whole thing since his lips touched it and it was useless. Cost him around $800. Had he poured it into his mouth, would he have loopholed out of this? This made me happy. Our bar was having a private party. A drunk dude walks in and orders a drink. I knew he wasn't with the party based on his attire and that he came in every so often. I told him I couldn't get him a drink. He lost his mind, told me to duck off, and then wanted to fight me. On his way out he yelled that we should put up signs as he walked by the signs on the door saying we were closed for a private event. He came in the next day sober and apologized. Hey, at least he apologized. Never mind that serving drunk dudes in a bar is usually illegal. Way back in the 80s I worked in a restaurant that was a favorite of a celebrity chef of those days, Jeff Smith, the frugal gourmet. Never seen a bigger ass than that guy. Literally make our servers cry. Nothing was ever right. He was beyond rude and condescending, yet he kept coming back. He had a reputation of being a jerk off camera. Eventually he was disgraced by being outed as a child predator and was quickly forgotten by all. Our restaurant was a good place. Another celebrity chef of the time, Graham Kerr, the galloping gourmet, was always a pleasure to have visit. In his day, Graham Kerr had the energy level of Gordon Ramsay, the health consciousness of Paula Deen, and the gleeful euphoria of a man well acquainted with ecstasy. He was fun to watch. Robert Iviner's persona non grata in the street. Pete Area for being basically a giant adder to everyone twins at his com. After a wedding reception ended at our facility we were cleaning, and I began the cleaning process on our espresso machine. The party was over almost a half hour already. The process takes 12 minutes. People were still there as the party slowly let out, and the father of the bride asks me for an espresso. I told him I could get it to him, as we have a strict policy of always trying to satisfy our guests' needs, but the machine was cleaning, and it would be done in about 10 minutes. He begins ranting about how much he paid for the wedding, and stormed to our banquets manager, and told them I refused to make it for him. Manager is at bag and starts ripping me in front of the guy. I show both of them that the machine is just finishing the cleaning process, and it was impossible to make it beforehand. I got suspended for 2 weeks. Oof. Hope you're out of there. Duck both of those turds. What rickheads. Work in a place that is frequented by local families and youth sports teams. On Sundays this one large group of people always come in, and they are the worst. The parents drink and ignore their preteens who run around playing games in the entire restaurant, disrupting everyone else. They have tried to walk in a party of 45 during end of year sports party season when we are booked solid and get mad that there isn't enough space for them. And they modify everything like crazy and leave zero in a tip. It's at least once a month the entire group comes in, and weekly for some of the individual families. Edit. Wow, thanks for the upvotes. Been a rough time. Like unbelievably. And this oddly helped. Also I'm not a server. I'm a cook who happens to take orders, pour beer, run food, clear tables, and do dishes. But primarily I cook. This is the reason many restaurants have an automatic gratuity on parties above a certain size. One large party can steal a server's entire evening, and having them not tip is painful. I worked at Friendly's in high school as a server and this brings back so many painful memories. Worked my off all night once for a whole soccer team and parents who came in with no notice. Then at the end of the night they wanted everything split up. The kids were sitting at different tables so trying to get the right kid's food to the right parent was near impossible. Not to mention some kids split meals or got specialty drinks and ice cream or appetizers. Some parents were trying to tell me what their kid ordered. Others were just saying, whatever the blonde kid with the headband ordered etc. It was impossible to work how got what and who was supposed to be charged with it. Not to mention about half of them had coupons that they were all switching around with each other, some of which were expired, but they wanted used anyway because they were spending so much money. A huge portion of the bill had to be comped because no one would claim a bunch of items and I didn't think to tell them beforehand they couldn't split the bill 17 ways. After reprinting checks about 10 times, because God forbid someone pay an extra $2 on a milkshake they said their kid didn't order, even though you could look over at the table and see half the kids had milkshakes. I was in the back crying. My manager was yelling at me over what a fiasco this was, and mad because the kids had been drawing on the tables and throwing crayons at other customers over the partition. I finally come back out to hopefully get everyone change or swipe cards or whatever, and one of the dads had the audacity to tell me to not look so stressed out, it's just Friendly's, duck you whoever that guy was. They then left me about a $15 tip in total for the 3 hours I waited on them with a bill that was easily over $400. A lot of them tipped on the coupon price instead of the actual cost, and a lot of them just left whatever change was left over. I know it's only Friendly's, and I might have been young, but that doesn't make the job any easier. Duck those people. Edit. Thank you, kind Redditor. If only 16 years old me had known, while I was crying in the dry goods, that one day this experience would earn me a Reddit gold. This one guy who basically hated his order so much that he waved me over and told me to put my hand out and proceeded to spit out entirely what was in his mouth into my hand, then tell me to refund him and then make him something else. Edit. Holy guacamole. This comment blew up more than I thought. Thank you for the cake day comments and all around comments alone, and the awards. Much appreciated, fellow Redditors. I'd like to point out that I was too shocked to really retaliate to what he did at that moment. I don't like confrontation, so I walked away to the bathroom and cleaned my hands for what felt like hours. My coworker saw what happened and told my boss, who kicked him out, and he was no longer allowed back. Anyways, have a great day. If you didn't immediately grind that food into his face and dump the plate on him, you're a better person than I also. Happy cake day. Jesus. That seems pretty illegal. Hope you threw his nastier out. I waited tables for a few years in college, and the worst table that I ever had was a Catholic priest and some guy he was trying to hit up for donations. The whole meal he was very condescending and demanding. After everything was done, I left the check at the table. He ended up walking out stiffing me, not just on the tip, but on the entire check. He even stole the leather check holder thing. I reported this to my manager. A couple weeks later, this same guy comes in with about 20 members of his congregation. My manager told him he wasn't welcome in our restaurant after walking out on his previous tab in front of his whole party. They all ended up leaving to go elsewhere. Best manager I've ever had. Guess he never heard of the commandment thou shalt not dine and dash. I would have demanded he pay the bill and then ask him politely to get the duck out. A homeless guy who came in, actively dripping of blood from his hands, and started screaming at me and threatening me because I wouldn't give him a bakery case item without him paying. He was dripping blood all over the counter and spitting everywhere until I threatened to call the cops. A huge group of clearly rich kids who came in, stole a bunch of drinks, and left the dining room. Trashed a guy who *DEMANDED*. I take money from our tip jar to help him pay for his order, and argued with me when I said no. People who would place large orders or even take home a cake and eat half of it, then flip their chiz and demand a refund when they'd find out it was all vegan, even though that fact was well advertised. That first guy was a huge biohazard, and I absolutely would have called the cops and made my manager deal with him. This sounds like Southern California. My friend works at restaurant. A vlogger was shooting a video, and since it was allowed within the place, nobody troubled her. Apparently she wanted one of those gone sexual clickbait thumbnails, so she asked my friend to place his face in her breast while she squirted ketchup on herself. My friend refused as he was in a relationship, but some other employee agreed to do so. After they shot the thumbnail, she marched in the next day claiming sexual assault. I don't know what happened after that, but it did not turn out good for the liar. I hate the vlogger already, and I don't know them. A place with lots of cameras and witnesses to verify that she was lying seems like a terrible place to attempt such dreadful acts. Bartending in a restaurant a few years ago. There was a private party, and one of the guests asked me to plug in his iPhone to listen to a song. No big deal. I did it, and he tipped me $20. He left his phone behind the bar and got wasted. When he was leaving, I said, "Sir, don't forget about your phone." He threw a beer on me and told me to leave him the duck alone and told me get a real job. Guess who got to keep a nice new iPhone? We had someone do a runner once and they left their phone. Reasonably expensive one, although this was over 10 years ago, so I can't remember if they were as much as they are now. He sheepishly came back the next day asking if one had been handed in. Our boss said no and kept the phone. Oof, I have a story about iPhones in the bar. We were at our favorite local dive, the kind where the bartenders are made to wear skimpy outfits. We'd been going a while and were on friendly terms with all the bar girls. Mysil and I are girls too, so we were pretty non-threatening. Anyway, this young guy comes in. Foreigner, seemed like from Mideast somewhere. He starts negging on the bartender and just being a total a-hole to her. At one point he pulls out 4 iPhone 7s and lays them out to show off. He tells her loudly if she sucks his rick she can have one. Needless to say, I was pissed because the bartender was feeling really uncomfortable at this point and the bouncer was nowhere to be found. The idiot talking smack got distracted for a moment speaking to another patron, and when he did, I swiped one of his phones, tossed cash on the bar, and left with my sill. The next day I felt kind of guilty, so I came back and gave the bartender the phone. Told her it's hers now and she can give it back or do whatever she wants with it. She found it pretty hilarious and said he had questioned whether anyone had seen his phone the night before, but nobody had, so he left pretty unburied. I worked in Domino's. I had a guy throw a handful of pennies at me while laughing. The 30 odd cents was my tip. He was mad when I turned around and walked away without picking any of them up. His exact words were, "Oh, my money not good enough for you? Fine. I'll never order Domino's again." I've never had a customer fire themselves like that before. It was great. I love when the "you'll never come back" threat comes out. Like, you think my salary is at all affected by you coming in? Please never come back. It's one less person to yell at me. We, a pizza shop, used to do a deal on Tuesday of buy one large and you get one free. This deal was stackable, so we were hectic as duck. 2 weeks ago the deal changed to any large for 15 they're normally between 20 and 24 depending on what you get. One woman was irate, yelling about how we're going to lose so much business by not giving out the free pizza, and she knows people who can't afford meals but come to us on a Tuesday and shall never come back. She came back the next week, even pre-ordered. This old guy who asked if I was included in the order. I'm 17. This happened to me when I was about that age. Some guy asked if I was on the dessert menu. I pretended so hard not to understand him that he actually got him buried, left a generous tip, and politely left without another word. When my sister was in college she worked at an Asian fusion type restaurant and on several occasions had older dudes hitting on her and a couple even leaving their number. Like, WTF. I think some of these dudes thought they had game back in the day and just can't grow old with decency. Also, no one wants to be hit on at work. Any table that mentioned the tip at all. Don't worry, we tip well. If you do X, we'll tip big. We'll take care of you. Holding the tip over my head doesn't get you better service. You get the same everyone else does. They were always pretentious and rude and never tipped well. Not a restaurant employee, but had a similar a-hole at my moving job. He gave us $20 halfway through the job because we were good, but said if you don't keep up the good work, I'll take it back. Jerk off. Adding on to this as it seems popular. First guy was a late 20s grade A doucher. Another guy was this short 45-ish powerlifter that was a stereotypical short man. Think of guys that call people cheese sarcastically and an a-hole to boot. Sometimes customers had water or Gatorade for us, and it was always appreciated. We were touring this guy's house, and as we walked into the kitchen he announced he had water for us. "Oh, awesome. Thanks," I said as I surveyed what needed to be moved. The MF pointed down to his dog's water bowl. "Yeah. Duck that dude." Same dude also had a plethora of weight/workout junk, which was fine. Movers are essentially powerlifters, but I saw him push what looked to be a bowling ball into the front lawn. I went to pick it up, thinking it was a bowling ball, but no, it was a 150-pound cast iron ball bearing from a ship's engine. He could have left it on the pavement, but where's the fun in that? Let it sink into the ground, where I had to dig it out and lift it onto a 4-5 foot truck bed. "Love that thing for grip strength," exclaimed the a-hole. My brother-in-law told a story about putting $10 in ones on the table, and every time the server did something that he didn't like, he'd pull $1. Sounds like most humiliating thing I've ever heard of. It didn't get the reaction he was expecting. I had a guy that was a germaphobe and had really bad OCD. He came through before, and my coworker didn't want to deal with him. So I went to the drive-through window after washing my hands. I cashed out the order that was on screen and he reluctantly handed over his card. I gave him the coffee that I cashed him out for. He started yelling at me saying that it was wrong. Apparently the person that took the order forgot to type it in. Unfortunate, but it happens. He started yelling at the coworker that didn't want to take his order at the window. So instead of just saying that it was the wrong order, getting refunded and being on his way, he stayed in the driveway for 20 minutes telling my coworker that she was stupid and unprofessional and was unfit to be a supervisor. He kept demanding that we get the phone number of our franchise owner, but apparently the number was wrong, and he kept yelling at us. But when we came back to the window after 20 minutes of this, he left. My supervisor went into the back to cry. I felt so bad for her. She's the sweet person. Fast forward less than a month later, he called the store to apologize, and the manager made sure that my coworker never dealt with him again, but he could come in as long as he didn't make a scene. He told the manager that his therapist told him he should apologize. He spent a combined total of 3 hours on the phone with the manager, where he apologized and also blamed us for making him late to his appointment that day. And at the end of the phone call, he asked if we were hiring. But that last line, though, the fact that he has a therapist means he's trying, at least. Some people just aren't good with other people. Imgacom guy threw a beer in my face when I stuck up for myself and told him to stop banging his fist on the bar and screaming yo to get my attention. I had a guy literally spit on me for the same reason. I was working at one of the busiest bars in a major city in the Midwest and this duckstick can't stop pounding his empty glad on the bar, rolling his eyes, and yelling I'm empty over here. It was 11 on a Saturday night and the bar was packed, literal line around the block. I told him I would get to him as quickly as I could, and not 20 seconds later I hear him slamming one of my duck English on the bar, again. I lean over the bar to tell him, if he can't stop abusing my glower, I'm giving him a plastic cup. Douche canoe proceeds to spit in my ducking face. I was honestly shocked. One of my regulars grabbed him by the back of his head and slammed his face into the bar. Fight breaks out. At least 20 of my glees ended up broken. Isn't that like art? Used to be a bartender at this hybrid restaurant slash bar slash movie theater. On big movie releases, the bar would get absolutely slammed, and on this particular night we had run out of glower completely. People were allowed to take their drinks into the theater with them. The only glower I had at the time were regular pint glees that you would normally serve water in. We only served beer in them in a pinch. This guy and his wife slash GF got lucky and caught a seat at the bar and he ordered a Jack Daniels neat. Having no other glower, I put it in a pint glass and explained that we were running low on rocks glees, assuming he would understand, since it was absolute chaos everywhere you looked. He took it and said I'm not very happy in a smarmy way and gave this cheesy little grin. I apologized again and said unfortunately we're not making any more glees back here, and him and his wife acted like I reached across the bar and slapped him. I just got my manager and told him to deal with them. He told them the same thing I had told them regarding the lack of glower and gave them a free drink which they seemed happy with. I would felt bad if there was something else I could have done for them, but there wasn't, so duck that guy. He said I'm not very happy and smiled. He wanted a free drink which he got. It's one of my greatest pet peeves when people say something for which there is absolutely no reasonable response. It seems to happen frequently. When they ask a question, I answer it, and then they explain why they asked. Can I make an appointment for Friday? No, I'm sorry, Friday is all booked up. Okay, because I'll be out running errands anyway. Useful information. Thank you. Duck right off. You touched a nerve there. Close bracket. Had a man and his wife come in during a really busy lunch rush. He was rude off the bat, interrupting me, not wanting to listen to me speak, whatever, it happens all the time. He was very adamant that he wanted both chips and salsa and a plate of roasted wings as appetizers. He kept emphasizing that he wanted them together before they ordered their lunch. Even though chips and salsa only take a minute and wings take about 12, I rang them in together because of how he ordered them. In hindsight, I should have made completely sure, but not 3 minutes later, the man is waving at my coworker across the restaurant, yelling at her about how he'd been there for 30 minutes and his appetizer is taking too long, and he wants it before his wings. I was at a party table, so she ran back and grabbed the chips and the wings which were somehow up as well, and brought them out. He took one bite of the wing and tossed the plate like a frisbee across the table towards her and started complaining about them being cold. I rush over to see what's going on, and he starts yelling at me, saying his food is awful and this is the worst service has ever gotten in his life. I don't do well with grown men yelling at me, so I went to the kitchen and my manager went out and thankfully had my back as much as he could and made the guy pay for the wings and the chips and then leave. After he left, I started to clean the table, where I found the single penny he tipped me with that my coworker promptly threw in the trash, and got a call from my general manager asking why a man had called me professionally challenged on Yelp. Some people are just the worst and make everyone else feel like shiz no matter what. Professionally challenged is hilarious. There was an old couple I loved who used to come in every single week to the restaurant I worked at. They were super nice and clearly still very much in love. Ed always kinda thought of them almost like role models of how I'd like to be in my retirement. They lived a couple of towns over in a picturesque place and would always have nice stories about what they'd been up to. The guy spoke like Ray Winston, which made him cool as duck in my eyes. Serving them always made the shift better. Anyway, one day we were doing a charity thing for World Hunger Day, specifically for children in Africa, and there were relevant pictures of starving kids on the flyer we gave with the bill. It was one of those tick here if you want to add 25p or something things. It was a bit cringe, but most customers were like whatever, it's only 25p. So anyway, I take over the bill and the guy totally blindsides me with his response, "I ain't giving no money to some ducking CO**n." I was caught off guard and stood in silence as he went into a mild racist rant. Ed totally never expected that. Ed seen these guys as people to aspire to, and it turns out they were mild bigots. I was gutted. I worked with a guy for a few years, was super friendly, if not a bit sheltered sometimes about the world, but I genuinely liked him. One night he came out to the bars with some coworkers and me and got pretty drunk. No biggie, we were all on the same level. But after we leave we are all walking together looking for food and he just completely unprompted starts saying stuff that would be considered at least mildly racist about black people and then tosses out a few N-words like they were nothing. We were just like, what the duck, dude, and for the most part left him to fend for himself. This was a Friday, and on Monday he pretty much acted like nothing had happened, but he was ostracized from our social group after that. Ended up leaving the company a few months later, but it turned out he and another coworker who wasn't there that night had a secret relationship that came out after he quit. She stayed with him, they got married, and had kids. I vaguely stayed in touch with her, so he had my contact info. He emailed me a while ago about a business opportunity and ended the email with the sentence, "Oh and hey, I'm not in a hole anymore." Which, at least he's acknowledging it, I guess. I basically wrote back that I wasn't interested and that I was glad he wasn't in a hole. A lesson I learned from the post is, don't judge the book from the cover. Fast food near a high school. The absolute worst were the moms. Had one who came in weekly and screamed about wrong orders or whatever complaint she could dream up so she could get free food for her entire family. Then you get the loser douches who think harrowing employees is funny. The absolute worst customer was the owner of the franchise. He'd walk in, test employees and then fire someone for some issue so minor it was likely just made up. I worked at a chain restaurant at one point and our douche of a regional manager would come in and do this. He never had people fired, he would just grade you on our pushing of the new menu items and overall knowledge of the menu. It was super cringe inducing. I ducking hated that job. Can I get an example? Just so I can rage. A lady from the real estate agency next door ordered a chicken box and then proceeded to drive an hour to her next showing. In the middle of summer, where it'd probably say right in front of her rack unit in the passenger seat. Surprise, surprise. Food gets cold when left in the cold. Who knew? Upon the shocking discovery that food doesn't stay warm, she called us to scream at my boss that we tried to kill her. Because he's a spineless pushover in the summer, he agreed to give her a new free meal when she came back. She came to get her free food, and things didn't improve. One of our chefs came to collect her cold food. While still in front of the window, he opened the box and fished out the uneaten biscuit. He threw the rest away, but walked away with the bread. I presume he meant to eat it, but he went about it all wrong. She started screaming about how we were recycling food, that she was good friends with the health inspector, that she was going to see us in court. The histrionics brought my boss out of his office, and after chewing out the idiot chef, he tried to smooth things over. I don't remember much, we were all busy, and since he'd taken over the drive-thru, I hopped onto another task. She wouldn't move forward, and the line was piling up. My boss was starting to get annoyed. They had stopped talking to each other. Her hot fresh meal is up, and he goes to hand deliver it and tell her to get the duck out of line. I'm not entirely sure, as I was halfway across the store trying to make drinks. All I remember is a surprised gasp from our food runner and looking up to see a box of steaming hot chicken came sailing through the window and scatter across the front of the house. My boss had barely stepped back in time. We could only stare as the crazy lady roared out of the parking lot, and he snapped at the first person stupid enough to still be making eye contact to clean it up. Stupid enough to still be making eye contact. Hehehe, I like that. One thing I hate more than rude customer is spineless bosses. I had one at my last job and every time I see him, I wanted to punch his teeth out. I will never forget the time when our customers riot cause we ran out of ketchup. I was there thinking, is this the peak of my US experience? We didn't run out of ketchup, but anything ketchup related reminds me of the time this trashy family was eating, and they were feeding their children the most absurd amount of food. The obese 6 years old was sitting there eating multiple orders of fries and just squirted an entire bottle of ketchup onto its own plate. I know it sounds like I'm exaggerating when I say entire bottle, but it was the entire bottle. My coworker and I just watched in amazement/disgust. Some people just love ketchup. Oh my god, as an American service worker I'm so sorry, and also laughing so hard. Where were you working at the time, if I may ask? I worked at a Vietnamese restaurant back in high school, and I had a Viet family come in to eat. They gave me snobby vibe the entire time, especially after I told them I couldn't speak Vietnamese. They ordered regular pho, but asked for no cilantro, so I rang the order in with no cilantro. It came out with cilantro in it, and I told the kitchen what the family asked. The kitchen told me they couldn't do anything about it, so I told my manager, and they told me to ask the family if they still wanted it. Family said yes, so I brought it out, and they took out the cilantro and ate the entire thing. At the end of the meal they spoke to the owner and complained how I got their order completely wrong, got the food for free, and got their bill taken out of my pay. The owner told me I should remove the cilantro myself. Chiz T management, Chiz T customer edit. I was not angry that the customer ordered no cilantro. I was upset at the fact that they abused their rights by asking not to pay for their food when they clearly ate everything. Also, it's been a few years, haha. That's illegal, you know they can't do that. Duck that place, I hope it closes for good. That's illegal, no manager or owner can take money out of your paycheck, doesn't matter if you drop $10,000 worth of food on the floor. It is illegal, and any Chiz T restaurant owner that does this deserves to be reported to the proper authorities or deserves to be doxxed. Not me, but I heard about my dad's former coworker being an absolute a-hole to a waitress. He'd only started working in my dad's department a few months earlier, and my dad did not like him from the start. This guy accompanied my dad on a business trip to Australia a couple of years back, and they went to a nice restaurant one evening. This guy proceeded to tell the waitress the food was horrible, then just resorted to personally insulting the waitress, which made her cry, on top of refusing to tip her. My dad immediately thought this guy is a complete a-hole. That same guy a few weeks later also tried to get my dad fired so he could get my dad's position as head of it. My dad confessed to me that he was thinking of leaving that company anyway, but that guy made him GTFO. Thankfully he's well known in his industry. He's the type of guy that could resign a job on Friday afternoon and start a new one on Monday morning, so to speak. So my dad submitted his resignation and immediately got a job elsewhere. Unfortunately the guy did get my dad's job, but lots of people in the department jumped ship to the company my dad was working at. As a result, the a-hole who had taken my dad's job ironically got fired a year later because nobody wanted to work for him. Edit. Okay, I'm getting a lot of responses about tipping in Australia. My dad was not aware you guys don't tip. He always tips everywhere he goes. Hope that clears it up. Not that this behavior is excusable at all, because the guy is a complete rigbutt. Australia on top of refusing to tip her. They do not tip in Australia. I worked in a beach town in NJ for a while, and New York tourists were the worst. It was the act that they were doing everybody a favor by being there. This was a rich beach town, not one that relied on tourism at all. In fact, these arrogant tourists probably brought the average income down, and definitely brought the average tips down. And anybody who snapped their fingers. I preferred "hey, you" to finger snapping. I get how annoying finger snappers are, bartender for 4 years, but they were honestly my favorite. By far the easiest way to make sure you get served last, and with the least enthusiasm, making my job much easier. I always barked at snappers. Woof woof. I worked at a bakery for 2 years, and I had to deal with honestly the most innocent rude customers ever. I've worked in the food service industry my whole life, and lived in Toronto up until 3 years ago, and I have never dealt with such entitlement. Anyways, one day one of our staff members quit by text message 5 minutes before her shift, and 30 minutes before we were set to open at 8 AM on a Saturday. We were hard pressed finding someone to cover, so I was alone until a front of house person was able to come in. About an hour later, I had one of the kitchen staff helping me, and all they could do was grab things and bag them as they weren't trained on cash or coffee. So here I'm running around trying to help customers, make coffees, ring people through, and clearly stressed. This douche bag man was clearly annoyed that he had to wait, huffing and puffing, and eventually loudly exclaimed, "Duck this, I'm not ducking waiting for this chiz," and proceeded to throw his bagged muffin at my head and storm out. I legit almost chased him down. I was livid. Customers are chiz lol. I've told this one before, but long story short, my buddy was 16 and got his first job at McDonald's in the food court at the mall. His third day of work was Black Friday, and he was put on a cash register. There were 3 registers open, line well over 50 deep at each register, stretched across the mall. Summer Wipe gets to the front and starts talking chiz about the wait. My buddy closes the register, hops over the counter, and tells everyone in line to duck off. Karens in the middle of the line were proclaiming, "You can't do that. People are such assholes." Oh, where to start? I worked in a cafe for a few years, and while there were some bad one-offs, the worst people were difficult regulars. There was one who would order the most popular thing on the menu, but with a list of modifications a mile long, right down to what fruit to include with the side of fruit, and how many inches tall to pile the turkey on the sandwich. She would always get it to go, and then would about 50% of the time call the restaurant from home saying that the order wasn't correct and that she wanted a refund. However, my least favorite was this woman who would come in about an hour before closing and then stay until past closing, bugging you for little things piecemeal all the while. I get that at sit-down restaurants, customers can generally come in whenever they want, as long as the doors aren't locked yet, and then stay as long as they want. However, we were a small cafe, and I would kick everyone out when I locked the doors. She just wouldn't leave. Once she was on the phone, when it was time for her to leave lol, I ended up just shouting at her, loud enough for whoever was on the other line to hear, "It is time to leave the cafe now." People not wanting to leave was relatively common, although most people would leave right away when you asked. Once a woman just wanted to finish up one more thing on her computer. One more thing turned into one more thing, which turned into one more thing. She was sitting by the open window, and there was no air conditioning in the cafe. So, finally I just went and closed the window. She gave me the dirtiest look, but she got the duck out lol. The first customer I described was my coworker's worst nightmare, and he always made me deal with her since. While she was super annoying, I didn't mind as much. The people who wouldn't leave at the end of the day pissed me off so badly though. People who come in 5 minutes before closing to eat a sit-down meal are the worst. The last bad one I had was a semi-regular and knew the owner, so I couldn't decline. There were times where I could, if it was dead. He and his coworker ordered the $7 burger special and stayed for over an hour. We made like $20 plus in sales off of them. These are why labor percentages can be a killer in this industry. I used to manage a restaurant and hated those couple of times in 5 years of my working there when some entitled customers left without paying because the waitresses didn't come to pick up my money. That's a piece of chiz move and a poor excuse when all you need is to grab a waitress's attention by simply talking. Once it was a family of 4 who left the restaurant during a busy evening, and we realized that the bill wasn't paid after some 10 minutes had passed. I checked the cameras and saw the father taking the bill, putting the money in, sitting there for just 3 to 4 minutes, looking around and taking the money back, and leaving with the whole family. Lucky our owner was a great guy and told me to simply ban the ducker and his family. And to my surprise, that piece of chiz came back with friends on a busy evening in a couple of months. I was very excited watching his face being buried in front of his friends and customers sitting outside when I told him that he is banned, and when his wife started to get upset I told them I remembered them and told them the whole story with me checking the cameras and seeing him taking the money back and all. I love customer service justice. That reminds me of a time we were smoking outside of Denny's and this guy left in a hurry and the tiny, scrawny waitress bolted after him shouting that he didn't pay and tried to tackle him, but he didn't go down, and some old lady that was walking toward the restaurant tripped him with her cane. Apparently waitresses have to pay if the table walk out on their bill. How ducked is that? Had some racist lady ask my Guatemalan co-worker a nonsensical question. Think something along the lines of which steaks are vegan about the menu several times, and when given the answer would repeat the question at louder and louder increments until she screamed at me, "Open kitchen, I'm white, excuse me sir, insert dumb question." She didn't like it when I gave her the same answer because her question made no sense. She just stormed my co-worker couldn't understand because she had an accent. In reality, this co-worker, while she has an accent, speaks Spanish, English and Arabic, which to my estimation is 200% more languages than this a-hole speaks 300%, because this bitch clearly doesn't speak English very well either. I worked in a Japanese restaurant, and it was a small restaurant, so I was usually working as cashier, waiter, busboy, and delivery driver. Basically it was me handling everything, and the owner would come out from the back and take over if there was a delivery. Anyway, one day we had a family come in. Mom and dad got sushi rolls for themselves, and then got chicken hibachis for the kids. The hibachi came with a side of rice, and I watched as these kids started throwing rice at each other. Mom and dad did absolutely nothing to stop them, like not even a "cut that out." When they left, the place all around their table was an absolute mess, and to make things worse the floor was carpeted, so cleaning rice out of it was a huge pain in the anomaly, but this was on a whole different level. Didn't even get a sorry about the mess from them. Back when I was a busboy, we had an older couple that I believe had an adopted son. Maybe 3-yo. Could have just been a grandkid, but for some reason I remember him being adopted. Anyway, literally every time they came in this kid was throwing food everywhere, running around the restaurant, just being a huge pain. They never did anything to stop him. Then one day they walk in, and as I'm preparing for the usual chaos, I notice that they got another one. This couple that was totally unfit to raise a child had joined and adopted a second. She too was a little terror. The lady who wanted an extra hot, extra full, slightly foamy latte. Go duck yourself, lady. I'm not handing you an extra hot extra full beverage. Those two don't mix, and I know you're a lawyer. Ducking C word. She wanted a lawsuit, I could feel it. What did you end up doing? One time a guy stared at my chest as I explained the specials, and then asked me about the specials. His girlfriend didn't speak to me for the rest of their meal. He gave me a 10% tip. It was always a fun time to play the "are you reading my name" tag or just staring at my boobs game, especially when I realized I wasn't wearing my name tag after. I had a customer randomly ask if we spoke English as I was talking to them in English. I've watched Native American servers be told that they should speak Spanish by Hispanic guests. Someone put the name on their order as Mo Lester and I didn't catch it in time. I was 16 at the time. That's when you call that out across the restaurant that you are looking for Mo Lester. Let them shamefully have to claim it. It was my first week as a waitress at a Perkins. Two old ladies came in 2 hours before the end of my night shift. They ordered the turkey specials, which came with soup, the meal, and dessert. I got their food and checked up on them. Everything was fine, but they were still eating. I came back 15 minutes later to check up again. One woman was finished, so I took her plate, but the other wasn't, so I left her to it. I came by again 10 minutes later and asked, still eating? The centerpieces in the middle of the table were positioned in such a way that I didn't notice the fork in her hand. She responded very rudely, obviously I am. What does it look it? I was new at this, so I was taken back. I apologized and laughed it off nervously. At this point, however, the kitchen was 10 minutes to closing. and I needed to put in their dessert order so the staff would know what items to not clean up and put away. So I asked the women if I could take their dessert orders, and the same woman looked at me angrily and said, "Do not rush us. We come here every week and never have experienced such poor service. There is no need for you to be hovering like this." I suppose I was hovering, but they were taking forever. I apologized and explained the kitchen was closing soon, but she wouldn't have it and sent me on my way. By the way, as all this happens, the other lady sat there awkwardly not saying a thing, although as I walked away I heard her tell her friend she shouldn't have yelled at me like that. I went back to the kitchen and talked trash with the other waitresses, but as I did I noticed my boss walking to their table. Oh great, so they're chatting now, and she's not even finishing her food. So a half-hour piece and the kitchen is closed, and the restaurant is about to close too. But there they are still chatting. When they were finally done I went and asked if I could take their dessert order. And guess what? They ordered something that needed to be prepared by the kitchen as well as coffee for the table. Well, the coffee machine had already been cleaned, which was a whole process, and the kitchen staff was gone. I told them that, and the one rude woman insisted I ask my boss to reopen the kitchen because he knew them and they were regulars. Having no choice I asked him, and he reluctantly did it. We made a whole new batch of coffee and he whipped up their order in the kitchen. They got a ton of free coffee because we had nothing to do with the leftover. I had to stay an hour and a half late while my ride waited in the parking lot so I could re-clean the kitchen by myself. Then I got yelled at by my boss for not taking their dessert order earlier, and he gave me no chance to explain myself. To top it all off, when they left I got a measly $8 tip on a $75 bill. Worst day ever. This made me rage. Sorry you had to deal with it. Worked fast food in high school. I've got a few. Man orders double cheeseburger with extra cheese and receives one with 4 slices instead of the usual 2. 2 minutes later, he is absolutely red in the face and screaming at the poor cashier. He's demanding to talk to the little chiz that made his sandwich and asking if we think this is some kind of joke. Apparently, when he ordered extra cheese he wanted 1 extra slice, not 2. Some guy comes to the drive-thru and orders 4 fish sandwiches. We only had 2 pieces of fish cooked, and they were really close to their whole expiration time. Since we had to cook more anyway, my manager said to waste those 2, since they were old, and make all fresh ones for the customer. Guy comes up to the window and they ask him to pull forward, because it'll be a couple minutes. Meanwhile, we keep serving other cars. After a couple orders go out, this dude is in the lobby and asking for a manager. He is irate that we made him wait on his food while serving other people. The manager apologizes and explains the situation. Most people would be thrilled we didn't serve them old food, but for some reason, that just made this guy angrier. He starts yelling louder and then threatens my manager with physical violence over it. She asks him to leave and threatens to call the police. Dude storms out, slamming the door so hard he broke the latch and squeals his tires as he leaves the parking lot. Without his order. Never came back for it either. We had this regular who came in every Sunday morning and ordered the same thing, a side salad, supersize fries, and a Happy Meal for her grandkid. One day, the person who bagged her order put the salad and the fries in the same bag as we were trained to do. If you've never seen a supersize fry container, they're tall. And the side salad is in one of those little rectangular plastic things, so as you can imagine the fries fell over. For a normal person this is no big deal. But not for this lady. She needed new fries and a new salad, in separate bags this time. Of course the fries we had already made that came up 1 minute ago were not good enough, and she refused to leave or accept the new ones until we made a fresh basket. What is it about being in a fast food restaurant that makes people psychotic? It's like a different world where normal rules of humanity are suspended. Throwing coffee at people, calling 911 over fries, crying over 1 slice of cheese. People don't call 911 because they were given the wrong mail at Lowe's. It's so strange. I used to work in Park City, where they have Sundance Film Festival. So you have a bunch of high maintenance persnickety people in the film industry in what is otherwise a pretty chill ski town in Utah. Just the absolute gall people have in customizing their order is enough to drive you crazy. I hope every line cook in every restaurant in Los Angeles makes $1 million. Here are some of the ones I remember. A lat, half almond milk half cream, mixed, extra hot with a small spurt of honey on the bottom. A black bean burger, but in a spinach tortilla with the tomatoes chopped not sliced. A breakfast burrito, but make it vegan. We had vegan options on the menu. The burrito wasn't one of them. I guess nobody from LA eats gluten, so I got a bunch of free croissants, so it wasn't a total loss. People always used to ask me, hey, do you think the chef can make? First off, you're at pizzeria, you know. He's not a chef. He's on furlough from the county jail and just tried to sell me a gun in the back. Let's not act like he's won a James Beard award. Next, yeah, we probably can make it. A bunch of people at a motorcycle factory can probably make a car. But it'll probably turn out like shiz, and you'll complain about it when you get it. I've worked into ski towns that have had similar clientele, and my home is a bay. The gluten thing is so annoying. I always ask people to please specify what they need done. It seems like the majority of people say allergy when they mean preference. They usually change their mind when I mention that an actual allergy requires the cooks to go through a sterilization process that might make their food come out more slowly. I also think a lot of them don't understand what allergy means for the cooks and feel bad. But I always love telling people that no, this request isn't happening. I'm not putting my cooks through hell and ducking up their groove when we are slammed. I have two from the same restaurant. First one goes like this. I worked as a busboy and it was getting near closing time. At this point it was around 9:30, we closed at 10, and this table, who was probably 20-ish feet away from where I was, started trying to say to me that's a free meal. I stopped vacuuming because I just didn't understand what they were asking me. Supposedly they were under the belief that if someone was vacuuming before close then they got a free meal. So eventually the owner comes up to me and asks me how far away I was vacuuming, and I said the same thing. She just told me, yeah, they're idiots, and told me to wait a little bit. They ended up leaving past 10:30, and I don't think they left a tip. They didn't get their free meal. Another shorter story was the time that two giant groups of about 16 people each came in a few weeks later at about 9:45. I think I got home at midnight that night. Used to wait tables a while back. Breakfast place. Mother's Day was always the worst to work in restaurants, as I'm sure anyone else can agree with. So this Mother's Day is going particularly well, and then towards the end of the brunch rush I get sat with a party of 8. Everyone's in a good mood. Mom, it's her day, orders our breakfast tacos with no onions. She says no onions like 3 times. Right, no onions. Drinks are going fine. Everyone is doing well. Food comes out. I ask how everything looks. Mom pushes her plate away and loudly and aggressively says I said no onions. I look down at the tacos to see that there are in fact no onions. Me, Mom, I put your order in with no onions. There are no onions. She gets a cheese-eating grin and goes, oh yeah, well what are these? And points to the green bell peppers on the tacos. Me, those are green bell peppers. She rolls her eyes and goes, same thing. The table is now silent as no one in her party knows what to do, clearly blinded by her stupidity. My brain short circuits. I think to myself, no, the duck, they aren't the same thing. They're not even the same ducking color. You can read. You're a ducking adult. Just say how you want something and stop making a scene. Instead I just put on my best customer service smile and said, right, sorry about that, well get that fixed. Took it back to the kitchen and told my chef, and he just started laughing about it. $0 tip. Happy Mother's Day. Back in college I was working my first job as a front of house staff for an on-campus locally owned burger place. My main job was to call the order numbers out to customers and power their food off. Easy enough. Well, one night we get absolutely slammed with to-go orders at close. I'm the only person out at the front and there were 2 cooks behind me working on the food. A man ordered 2 burgers. Cool. Well, we're so busy I'm obviously not aware of what number goes with what customer off the top of my head, and I call out a number. A customer takes it and heads out. Turns out the wrong customer grabbed that man's order. He proceeded to yell profanities at me, calling me a ducking idiot, demanding his food be free, and that he gets free fries. all in front of other customers. I started crying. It held up everyone else's food in the process. The manager has to tell him to duck off and remakes his food. It was just one giant shit show. Not necessarily the worst crime here, but there was a group of little old ladies that would come in every Sunday after church. All four would get the same thing every week. Iced tea and a half grilled Asian salad with a senior discount. $4.19. Every time they paid with $4 bills and 2 dimes. The tip? 4 cents. While this sucked enough on its own, the fact that they were always super sweet to everyone made it burn even more. But on top of all that, on Sunday morning/afternoon, a really busy shift, they would sit there for several hours. So on a busy day, when you only had 3 or 4 tables, having one of those tables taken for hours with a guaranteed 4-cent tip really sucked for your income for the day. Also worked at a fast food restaurant in high school. We closed at 9 on Sundays. Almost every Sunday, a group from a local church would roll in at about 8:55 and order full meals, full desserts, and then sit in the dining room until 10:30 or 11. We ended up having to make extra strong Sunday ammonia cleaner that we would use on the surrounding tables to get them to leave. As a high schooler, it was infuriating. We had an 8:50 to 8:55 crowd on Sundays too. It was the fast food with square burgers. Except they were also so disgusting we could be there until long after the kitchen closed doing the dining room and bathrooms. Big group of them. And our spineless manager would not throw out paying customers. Finally, one of the new guys started adjusting the big clock in the dining room, 1 minute at a time, while the manager's back was turned, until it was 5 minutes fast. Then he'd go at fake 8:59 and lock the doors. One time he did it while the Sunday night people were in the parking lot, getting out of their cars. Waved to me. I immediately asked manager the most complicated question I could think of about a training thing that needed answering in the office and that kept him so busy that not even the latecomers' impotent knocking could be noticed, while clock changer calmly lifted the phone off the hook and cleaned it. Next week, another of us showed manager something fascinating in a catalog for his car at that hour and again, the phone got sanitized. The week after that, they tried to show up early at 8:40, only to discover the doors locked again, all the chairs up, and the whole place being professionally rug cleaned. 4th week, they didn't return. We all chipped in and got clock changer a PlayStation 2, which was a big deal in those days. I've never been a server, but they always tell me the church crowd are often the worst tippers. While some are generous, on average Sunday afternoons, early evenings are where servers are tipped the least. Pizza, ice cream, sandwich shop in a small rural town. I was on delivery. We had this guy who ordered maybe once a week or so. This customer lived a solid half an hour outside town. None of us knew why the owner ever agreed to deliver to this guy in the first place, being that far out, but we used to wonder if the owner was being threatened into it. The level of cheese the customer would raise if you didn't bring him cheese and peppers for his pizza was absolute madness. There was an incident where a delivery driver found the customer waiting on his porch polishing a shotgun, and the first thing the customer did was loosely point the gun towards the driver and say, "Did you bring my cheese and peppers?" We fully believe the customer would have shot our driver if the answer had been no. As it was, the driver didn't have as much cheese and peppers as the customer would have liked. Customer called the restaurant, threw a fit. From then on, when we delivered to this customer, because the owner didn't cut him off, we were told to take a bucket of cheese and peppers with us. I'm talking like one of those bulk ice cream buckets you buy at the supermarket. We all kept on in our trucks, but we had to start taking an extra, just for this one customer. I wonder if the guy was even in it for the pizza. That is the weirdest ducking thing to threaten a pizza place for. Like, if you are going to threaten someone, why on earth would you threaten them to deliver pizza you pay for once a week with large amounts of extra cheese and peppers? Though actually, thinking about it, that probably only made him scarier. I'm truly sorry. An old ex-military man around 80, he constantly tells me how pretty I'm not in the sweet grandpa way, which is fine. Many customers do that and it's sweet, but in a really slimy predatory way. He even said he'd show me how well his thing still works. He thinks he's got a right to pull this chiz because he's 4 times my age right before quarantine hit. He had the audacity to straight up put his hand in my face while I was minding my business clearing a table. I know how ridiculous it must sound, but being a waitress for a couple of years, I can deal with stupid pickup lines or some asshole reaching for but with those people, you can either shut them down real quick verbally or kick them out. However, you can't just kick someone out for something as innocent as this prick does. He knows that damn well and is always right on that line where he could still defend his actions as innocent. I had a customer order the crab crusted salmon. After about 30 minutes I brought out the food and the customer then decided to tell me that they couldn't eat it as they were allergic to crab and that they didn't read what the meal was. Both my manager and the chef were pretty pissed, cause the customer then didn't want to pay for the meal. So a few years ago I worked at Pizza Hut. This couple came in and they both looked terrible. They had horrible scars and terrible acne on their faces. They were older, so I don't even know how they had acne, but anyway, they came in and I got stuck with them. They stank. Like, they must have not showered in years. I almost gagged every time I had to go near that table. You could literally smell these people 2 feet from the table. It was just horrible. I can't even describe to you how bad this smell was, and I was forced to act like nothing was wrong. They were both very rude on top of it, always wanting something, and just general jerks. They didn't leave a tip of course, and even tried to demand discounts while paying for their food. They sound like meth addicts. That's usually when you see severe acne in trashy people like that, or major mental illness and they were incapable of caring for themselves. It must have been a special occasion for them to go out to a fancy restaurant like that. Worked at a nice one near where the Mets have spring training. One well-known player would always come in like 5 minutes before closing during the week when we were empty with his mistress. He wasn't really a bad customer as he tipped well, but I found it really strange. It was an unspoken rule never to tell anyone about it. The mayor of my small town had a private party in my bar/restaurant. Bunch of middle-aged people, most of the females were local teachers, drunk, stumbling all over, spilling, breaking glass, trying to hug me. But this one guy, oh my god. This fat sweaty middle-aged disgusting man went behind my bar and broke at least 3 glass, refused to pay when I yeeted him out and refused to serve him because he was so drunk. He took out a bag of cocaine and snorted it off the bar. Then he looked at me all smug and victorious. I called my boss hoping he would come and solve it, but he was a mama's boy who was playing entrepreneur on his father's expense, and he was super excited that the mayor wanted to party in his place. He joined in on the madness. When they started trashing the furniture, he finally dismissed the party. He helped me clean. I noped the duck out the next day, of course. I used to work at a candy store in a popular area for tourism in my rich, white hometown. Lots of dumb people, lots of annoying people, and lots of bulges. But, I'd say despite this one of the worst customers I worked with wasn't actually a customer. We hadn't opened yet, and I was outside washing the windows and tables by myself. I was 17 and older man, probably 50 to 60. Walked up behind me while he was walking down the sidewalk and said looking good. Other than that, I had a customer come in once while we were open and I was working my section of our store's counter. I said, "Hi, welcome to store. Would you like to try some free samples today?" In my very over enthusiastic customer service voice. It's some middle-aged ducking bozo again with his wife, and he turns to her and says, "Hey honey, would you like samples?" Clearly mocking me. His wife looked at me while he laughed, and I just stared at him like, "Are you ducking kidding me, dude?" Until he got the hint. Last story. A pizza place I currently work at, I picked up our phone and a little girl probably like 7 years old was like, "Hi, I ordered a pizza and I was wondering when it's gonna be here." She sounded obviously very nervous to have to call on the phone and talk, but I helped her the best I could. I was kinda new and told her it was gonna be 10 to 15 as their food was already on the road. Less than 5 minutes later I get another call and it's this woman. And she's like, "Hi, my daughter called and you guys a while ago. She said you guys told her the pizza would be here in a couple minutes and you refused to refund the order when she called and it's not here. Yet you lied to my daughter, give us our money back." It's obvious this woman wasn't expecting the same person who helped her kid to pick up. And I was like, "Mom, I was on the phone with your daughter 5 minutes ago. I did not say it was almost there." I said it would 15 to 20 minutes, and at no point did your daughter ask for a refund. She stops for a secretary, and she was not expecting me to know she was straight up lying. But the average person who calls on the phone to order pizza, instead of ordering online like a normal person, isn't very bright to begin with, much less someone who calls on a Saturday night close to Christmas and gets angry when the delivery time is over 5 hours when she wants the pizza in 30 minutes or less. Have delivery time for 6 on a Saturday obviously isn't 30 minutes ever, so IDK what prescription pills this mom was taking, but she had worm brain anyway. So she basically spent 10 minutes on the phone screaming at me about how I'm stupid, how my big A pizza chain store is gonna be sorry. IDK dumb chiz like that's just insulting me and my place of work, like I give a chiz about my job or something, and telling me to refund it, and trying to get me to give out our driver's personal cell number. Eventually I'm like, yeah, duck this psycho bitch. I put her on hold and let one of my poor managers handle it. By the time he got on the phone, her pizza was gonna be there any second, and she screamed at my manager and screamed at the driver until they decided to ban her from ordering from the locations in our area. People are psycho. Once I had a family of 4 come in. I work at a sushi restaurant, so of course there's the open sushi set, and logically each person gets charged for it. The dad started joking around, trying so hard to make me charge him with 2 sets instead of 4. I apologized and said I can't do anything about it. He got mad and said bitterly, some respectful staff this company has. I want to speak to the manager, and I told him there is no manager at this branch. So he laughed like he didn't believe me. Then he said gonna ruin your life for his 2 days later. The hours calls me and tells me that a man came in and said that I yelled at him and that I was very disrespectful towards him and his family. I wasn't helpful or welcoming and I refused to be nice to him. I stood up for myself and told him what really happened. The hours proceeded to say I really don't know who I should believe and hung up. 2 days later, I'm fired. I'm so sorry. I hope you found a better job. Used to work in an Indian restaurant in southern England. It was special forces training in enduring racism and bodily harm. My father, who worked with me, had his front teeth knocked out by a drunken customer. I saw a woman punched unconscious outside because she got into someone else's taxi. And you thought your shift at Olive Garden was bad. Guy who tried to get me to hit on cute waitresses for him. If there's a cute waitress, why would I cock block myself for you? When I worked at Subway one night, we were running out of spinach. A guy dressed like a cowboy came in and ordered a foot long. We get to the spinach and the cowboy says, I want a lot of spinach. Good luck with that. We're only supposed to put pinches on anyways. But this guy's used to me giving people extra when my manager isn't around, because I roll that way, but not today. You're gonna give me more than that, he says in a demanding tone. We're running out of spinach today, I say, knowing a boomer tantrum brewing. When I see one give me more, I give him pinches, but he wants handfuls. The cowboy demands I need more spinach than that. Boy, see, we're running out of spinach. Do you know how much I come here and they give me all the spinach I want? I only have people extra when they're nice. So duck off, dude. Yeah, other customers are gonna want spinach tonight though. I've been coming here for years. Even though your proofs keep going up, why do the prices keep going up in my head? Because this isn't a restaurant, it's a sandwich factory. And companies in unchecked capitalism are free to maximize profit as opposed to worry about food quality, health, price, or what silly cowboys think. What I said, I'm a cashier, dude. They don't even let me touch the board. You just talked yourself out of a sale. What's your manager's number? I give him my number. Cowboy leaves and leaves me a voicemail. I text back one thing, YEHAWTL. Doctor, he asks for too much spinach and you eat his last whore. It's a takeout pizza place, but this is a fun one. It's the day before a huge event in my town. Draws in a lot of visitors from around the world. Obviously a pizza delivery place is going to be busy. Past 8 PM on said day, this guy calls, ordering $160 worth of food for delivery. It's like 10 large pizzas and a bunch of wings. Okay, normal delivery time for anything is an hour. I knew it was a lot more than we can handle in an hour. I asked an older coworker, and he told me it would be an hour and a half because the chicken is going to take so long, and we can put maximum 4 large pizzas on the oven at once. And again, we have a lot of other orders. I tell the guy, I need it by 9. Sir, we can't deliver that much food within an hour, especially not tonight. We are backed up as it is. It's too long of a wait. Well, if you pick it up we might be able to have it ready in 45 minutes, but it's a stretch even then. Fine. I don't want it. So yeah. Someone cancelled a $160 order because we were too busy to get it delivered in under an hour the day before a huge event in our town. Oh, and did I mention this was our fire chief? Generally speaking, the worst customers are Sunday afternoon after church services are out. If you know what I mean, and I think that you do. I once had a really bad customer, and it was really bad. Wow, that sounds really bad. There were plenty, but one of note was one of the guys from American Pickers. Had been coming into our spot a lot and seemed cool. He asked me for our specialty drink with basil in it. We didn't have a drink with basil. We had a version of mojito with mint in it, and I assumed that's what he meant, but I wanted to make sure. Me, do you mean our blah blah mojito with mint? Picker slams hands down on table and stares me dead in the eye. The one with ducking basil. I got it last week. It's on the special menu. I go and ring in the mojito with mint and no ducking basil and bring it out. He takes a sip and says perfect. Duck that junk dealer. I have a few stories, but the lady at the cafe was the only one that actually made me cry from being so angry. At the cafe I worked at I was making the drinks one day and Kawaka was at the register. We were very busy, so she missed writing down the specific instructions for one of the orders. All I knew was that the customer wanted a small black tea. So I make it and call it out. The lady tells me she wants it in 2 cups, very rudely, so I split it up and put it on the counter. She then says she asked for extra hot water in both cups and tells me I'm terrible at listening to directions. So she is basically asking for 2 teas for the price of 1. But I don't have time to argue, so I just do it, and it put it back on the counter. She then spills it on her hand while picking it up from the counter and yells, "Al, why did you do that?" As if I handed it to her myself and intentionally poured it on her. She then proceeded to go on a tirade about how she would sue and I'd lose my job. I was so effing mad that I started crying, and I guess that made her feel kind of bad or something, because she came back after she finished her tea to tell me her hand was okay, so there was no need for legal recourse. As if that was supposed to make me feel better. She was an insane piece of work that I had the pleasure of dealing with a handful of times. Her brother that she came in with would often apologize on her behalf. Former restaurateur and bar owner here. Worst customer was the assistant chef, who got drunk after closing the kitchen and tried to pick a fight with me. Actually took a swing at me. I brought him in the next day and we had a long chat about his conduct. I'll let him keep his job, provided he gave up drinking when on the premises. A couple weeks later, I showed up unexpectedly and he was at the bar drinking. The other cooks, knowing he should not be there, saw me coming through the parking lot and shuffled him off and hid him in the kitchen before I could find him drunk at the bar. I did find him, however. He was parred out, standing up, in the kitchen, leaning against the prep table. His pants were around his ankles, and he had pissed everywhere. I fired him, instantly, and as punishment, the other cooks had to stay through the night to disassemble, deep clean, and disinfect the kitchen. Best customer was the one we nearly killed. She asked if there were any mushrooms in the lasagna, and the waitress told her there were no mushrooms in the lasagna. The customer, however, didn't state she was allergic to mushrooms and the tomato sauce used in the lasagna actually did have mushrooms. Her face swelled up, and her body promptly rejected the skin from the inside of her mouth and lips, which all began peeling off in big blisters, while her breathing slowly became more difficult. Thankfully she was okay in the end, and didn't take any sort of action against us. Not a horrible customer, but a time I worked at IHOP led me to witness a man add Tabasco, Cholula, salt, pepper, and Eames 47 sauce to his pancakes. That should be a crime. One dude would come into the cafe with his 2 Chesty dogs that would hop on everything and bark at people. Even if there was a line, he'd just raise his hand and yell coffee and just walk past the line and wait for his coffee, where he'd pay cash at the pickup area. One day, after he skipped a particularly long line, I refused to make his coffee. He started shouting at me and saying he'd get me fired, but eventually he went to the end of the line and he had to order his coffee from me. Nobody clapped, but I felt like the people in line were clapping in their hearts. Once an older man came up to me and asked if I would be his sugar baby. I was 17. He then went on to tell me about how the Aryan race was superior, and we got into a heated argument. In Latina, I got a write-up, and they made me hide from him in the kitchen. I was a cook, so I didn't deal with the customer directly, but I felt the server's pain as she came back and reported to me. This woman came in with her young daughter and asked what the soup of the day was. She was told it was tomato garlic. She then demands we serve her a bowl without the garlic because she had a date later, which honestly is far from the worst customer ever, but maybe one of the most unaware of how food preparation in a restaurant kitchen works. Worked at McDonald's as a manager. Now I'm pretty easygoing when it comes to mess ups and credits. Pretty much you say we fit up, I will replace it. I don't even ask for a receipt. Pretty much I figure we mess up as much as people like about it. Nearing the end of my shift, this dude comes walking in and yelling and cussing at me. He claps at me and tells me to get over here and he wants his goddamn kid's meal. After about 15 ducks later I finally had enough and said, well, I'll give you your money back for the nuggets and half that food you just spit all over me in the counter. He said, I just want my ducking nuggets. I said, please. I said, oh, you said please? Sure, here is your nuggets, and gave them to him and said, have a nice day in my best duck tone. Then he threatened to beat my A. Cops was eventually called by a regular dude, got arrested for public intoxication, DUI, and endangering the welfare of a minor. Dude wrecked his life over some nuggets that I would have gave him plus like 5 free meals cards if he wasn't a ducking rig. Worked at Subway. A couple came in and was rude ASF the whole time, but what stood out was they got 2 6 and meatball marinara double meat extra sauce and wanted my manager's number to complain because it was messy and just standing there thinking I make sandwiches, not miracles. It's probably not bad compared to other creepy customer experiences people have had, but I was 18 working at a golf club restaurant with a lot of snooty, elderly people. This one old guy came around the corner out of sight of the rest of his table and other customers. He took my hand in his, gave me a tip, complimented my looks, then kissed me on the cheek. I was very uncomfortable. Duck. I work in a fish and chip shop. There's a regular who comes in every Thursday/Friday. One time he came, I accidentally charged him for slightly more than he bought. I eventually noticed, fixed it, life went on. Now, every time he comes in, whenever I ask him for payment he makes a point of counting how much his order comes up to and how much change I gave him really loudly under his breath. And he doesn't stop after one count, he just counts it over and over again while I'm trying to wrap up his chips all the way up until he leaves. He doesn't do this when he gets served by my coworker. I ducking hate that guy. I worked at a sit-down artisan pizza place in a nice neighborhood for a while. One time I saw a customer scream at and belittle one of the waitresses so much she cried, "You're an idiot. How hard could your pathetic job be?" type stuff. He was mad that there were not more pepperoni slices on his pizza. He also did this with his wife and 2 kids at the table for context. I worked at a grocery store that had hot food to go and pre-prep meals. I worked in that department for 4 years and had a lot of messed up customers. We used to joke that even the crazies have to grocery shop, lol. We had a glass covered counter with heat pads and lights to hold the food. The counter allowed 2 people to be served at once, which was handy in a rush but could cause some issues. On this night I started serving a lady who ordered something and the rest of the chicken wings. My co-worker started serving the second customer in line who had heard the first order. She wanted chicken wings as well, so my coworker told her she would have to wait about 5 to 10 minutes for the next batch to come out. She immediately flipped out, saying that she ordered them first, she hadn't, and that her kids were hungry at home. She insisted that the other lady wait instead. I finished packing my customer's wings and began handing them to her. The rude lady was saying something like, "Wow, you couldn't leave any for me." At the same time she shoves the first lady into the counter in attempt to reach for the wings. She pushed her so hard the glass case rattled, and the baby the first lady had in a carriage began to cry. The second lady kind of snapped out of it and went to pay and leave. The lady I was serving was so stunned she didn't know what to do. We told her to call the police because she had been assaulted. She agreed and went outside to see if she could get the other woman's license plate. Apparently in the parking lot the lady who'd stormed out almost hit her as she was leaving. The police arrived and took everyone's statements. Afterward I saw both ladies, and after getting the point across, the lady who was shoved dropped the charges. What a crazy day though. Edit. I'm from Canada, so our laws are a bit different than Americans, but I don't know enough about how they work to comment. The ones who were very demanding, often unnecessarily rude and rarely tipped. A lady who claimed she was deathly allergic to clams and other mollusks. I was a chef at a seafood restaurant in Maine. I worked as a server in a 24-hour diner in a small Massachusetts city. There's a prestigious school, Williston Northampton School, around the corner. Wealthy kids, almost all of them were awful. The school does this thing called button bucks. It's a prepaid card, and many of the businesses in town accept them, including the diner. Those kids treated us like we were subhuman. Snapping fingers, interrupting me while I was taking another customer's order, make a giant mess, crack jokes about us, all sorts of chisty things. Then they don't tip. I had one group of boys order about $70 worth of food, paid with a $100 bill. I brought them their change, some bills, and 13 cents in change. As they walked out the door they made a point to tell me your tip is on the table. I could tell by the way he said it that there was some chisty thing going on. They put the 13 cents in a cup full of water, napkins, ketchup, half-chewed fries, just a nasty cup they made just to be mean. The 13 cents on the bottom of the glad was my tip. That's the only time I threw a glad in the trash. I refused to degrade myself further by picking through it. It's been years and even now I feel rage just thinking about those Williston kids. Duck the willies. Having a drug addict throw hot coffee at me, or the time another drug addict threatened to kill me, or the time a naked woman just rando walked in, also on drugs. The interesting ones always showed up when I was working. Happened right before the shutdown. 3 siblings, teen boy, preteen girl and elementary girl, come in without their parents for tacos an hour before closing. They order 3 tacos, but they come with 2 in an order, so I clarify that they want 6 tacos. Preteen girl, PTG, we come all the time and we get them as singles. With a bad attitude and not looking up from her phone. BTW, me, I'm sorry, we only offer single tacos during happy hour, 7p. PTG, well last time we were here we got them. Me, I'm new here, so it was probably an old thing we did. PTG, new since last week. At this point I'm getting frustrated arguing with a child and ask if she wants to speak to my manager. PTG, whatever, but if I see on the receipt that fear singles I'm going to have to kill you. All with a smile on her face. Attention parents, if you send your kids to a restaurant alone, please teach them manners. TYTL. Doctor, 11-year-old Karen tries me, as if she knows more than me, the employee, then threatens to kill me. Not the worst, but one of the more memorable moments. So we had a regular at our restaurant, named Larry, who would come in every night, watch baseball, drink makers and just be an all-around great guy. I later had another gentleman that came in and sat down at my bar and asked me to change the channel on the TV from the Nationals game to Fox News. When I refused he became very irate with me and I simply responded with Larry is watching the game, so I can't change it, which Larry quickly followed me up with yeah I'm watching something worth a damn. Needless to say Larry got a free Maker's Mark and I didn't get a tip, but it was worth it. I worked at a local Italian restaurant and one night I had a couple that came in and sat themselves and demanded their menus. First red flag. When I came over the man told me how he was from Italy and he already noticed that the carbonara rice isn't made like real carbonara. The real stuff apparently has 4 types of cheeses on it. He made me check with the kitchen to see if they could make it the real way. We couldn't. Then he still decided to get it, knowing he wouldn't like it. At this point I knew that I was going to get a chisty tip, because who the hell orders something they don't think they're going to like? Anyways, I get them their complimentary bread, and he complains that it's not hot enough. It stays in a bread warmer, so I have the chef pop it in the pizza oven, but the dude isn't happy with it still. So I have to wait for the kitchen to prepare fresh bread, and he barely ate any in the end. Surprising no one, this guy hated the carbonara, and he of course chewed me out over it, and told me how disappointing he thought our restaurant was, and how now he'll have to drive back home to Miami unhappy. I calmed his bill, apologized, and told him I hope the rest of his night went well. The entire time his wife said nothing, and sheepishly smiled at me. No tip of course. But him leaving was good enough for me. Lol, do you guys remember restaurants? I was working at the food court at a ski resort in New Hampshire. Had an old guy ask me how I got to the country, and if I needed a husband to stay. I ignored him, so he kept pushing it, telling me I would make a great wife, and that he could help me. The cashier was like our grandma, and made sure customers didn't mess with us. She came and yelled at him until he left. When I was bartending one night, I had 2 people come in that seemed a little loose, but not so much that I shouldn't serve them. I gave them a round or 2, and they were having fun and interacting well with customers until they weren't. They started crossing the line where I felt comfortable serving them anymore, and I probably gave them one more round than I should have, but I was hoping they would cut themselves off. Well, the time came to cut them off. I apologized and had to let them know that I couldn't serve them anymore because they were being disruptive in a small bar and were obviously very drunk. At this point, one of the 2 starts yelling at me for refusing to serve her, and then when it got so bad that the customers around her started defending my choice, she then started throwing a tantrum at them, and then my manager after that. So, that part one can deal with. People get drunk and say all sorts of chiz they don't mean. You have to learn to brush it off. What truly ducking baffled me is that while the one customer was screaming at me and anyone else in range of her voice, her friend had retreated to the bathroom and set fire to one of the wicker baskets that we used as trash can. They left before one of our poor barbacks was told that our bathroom was on fire by a customer. I've broken up fights. I have had one customer puke 3 times in the process of trying to get them out. I've had to kick out people 3 times my size for being bigoted and intolerant. I've had people yell at me for cutting them off. And I've had so many people just fall asleep on the bar top. You know who you are, but arson just really took the cake. Crazy thing is, after all that bullshit, I've always encountered way more good than bad, and I truly miss being behind the bar during this quarantine. Hopefully, it'll get to see you crazy ducker soon. I only had 2 tables at the beginning of a weekday shift. We were a bar/lounge, so slow weekdays were common. For some reason, they chose to sit near each other. Well, one table ordered BBQ chicken nachos, and once they were ready, I took them out. The second table saw them, and after I dropped them off, she asked me what they had ordered because it looked amazing. So I told her what appetizer it was, listed the toppings for her, told her it was available BBQ chicken, plain, or steak. She said that she wanted exactly what the other table had, and I told her that was the BBQ chicken option. She confirms. I put in the order, bring it out to her, she's polite, takes the food. She's eaten about half the nachos, and I stop by to ask her if she needs anything, and she tells me this is not what I ordered. I want a refund. I don't like BBQ sauce. At this point, who gives a chiz? So I tell her sorry, we will take them off the check, and I take the half plate back to the kitchen. I stop by her table to check on her drinks shortly after. For some reason, she's suddenly irate. She wants to know where her new free order of BBQ chicken nachos is. I explained to her that she would have to pay to reorder. They wouldn't be free, especially if she was trying to order the same thing. I remind her that there is BBQ sauce on the BBQ chicken nachos, and she returned the last order because she doesn't like BBQ sauce. This older bitch starts yelling at me about how she is owed a new dish for free, and she became the first and only customer I flat out told we would refuse to accept any further food orders from. She closed out her drink tab and decided to linger for about another hour. We allowed indoor smoking and were just about the only place left in the city that did, so she chain smoked her gross clove cigarettes, and a pleasant table nearby who watched everything happen tipped me $40 and told her she was rude AF on their way out. So I guess it worked out alright. Oh boy. Story time. I was working at the most popular Italian fine dining chain in America. We opened at 11, but I was scheduled for 10:30 to do opening duties. Two middle-aged women were at the doors at 10:45. We let them in, because it's not a big deal. But what is a big deal is that they both ordered drinks and our bartender didn't get there until 11. I let them know, and they seem okay with it. This is where things fall to choose. I drop off waters while they wait for their drinks. That's great, honey, but that's not what I wanted. Haha. They smile and it's clear she's just trying to make a bad joke. Again, I tell them that it's only 10:55 and the bartender is not in yet. They tell me to make the drinks. I can't because corporate rules. I ask my manager to make the drinks. While he does that, I take their food orders. I don't remember what their mains were, but they got calamari as an app. They start oversharing, like a lot. Turns out they're out to lunch, because one of them was at the hospital, and just got a lot of blood drawn. They mention trashy men, bad drivers, and they are swearing a lot. Now it's 11:05ish, and they have their calamari in their drinks. Ugh, was that so hard? Finally, other guests, including young families, arrive and sit in my section. They eat half the calamari and then decide it was undercooked. It was golden and perfect. I ask the kitchen to drop new calamari and cook it like a minute longer than is typical. Surprise, this ruins the calamari. They hate it. I'm not eating this cheese. And I ask the manager to take it off their check. They are taking up a lot of my time and asking for a lot of little things. I go to take care of some other tables. They ask if I'm okay and then ask if I could ask the women to stop swearing so much in front of their children. Next time they drop an F-bomb, I tell them that this is a family restaurant. Blah blah blah, free country. Oh, I want another drink. Fine. Whatever. I put the order in. Their meals are up right at that second, so I return within a minute to drop their food off. Where is my second drink? Hello. Now they are banging their half-empty glees on the table. I offer grated parmesan on their meals. One says, "Come on, what do you think?" Now they're yelling at me, and I start to cry while still trying to take care of my other tables, who are angels. I ask my manager to take over the rude folks and to let them know they are cut off from alcohol, and he tore them a new one in the way only managers are allowed to. They got upset they couldn't order more drinks and ask for the check and leave. They barely leave enough cash to cover the bill, but one comes back and asks if she left enough of a tip. I say, "No, you left me a 2% tip." Because yeah, I could get fired for saying that, but like also, I'm so done. She gave me $5 more and I never saw them again. Worst customers ever. Best manager ever. Worked as a host at a Persian restaurant in the 90s, Chicago. Had a Saudi Arabian political big shot come in all decked out in an expensive man dress. He threw a fit because I egged him a female server who was Persian. Refused to have a female serve them. We were very busy, so the owner asked that I wait on him because I'm an Iraqi man, which carried a lot of respect back then, since most of us were dying from the wars. What he didn't know is that I'm a small minority from the Middle East, a Christian, one that still speaks an ancient language. I served that table with my crucifix chain exposed on my chest. He was furious, but couldn't say anything. All of the Muslim waiters were cracking up because we all despised Saudi Arabia for the oil-hungry sellouts they've always been. That little rich man was terrified of me. All the power he had in me was destroyed by an Iraqi Chicago boy. I made him my bitch that night. Over 20 years later, and I still remember it vividly. Pose. Not any particular customer, but I used to work in this restaurant in downtown Palo Alto a few years ago. One day, of all people, Mark Zuckerberg comes in with his wife, baby, and father, I was guessing, and they sit in a booth. Then a ducton of people follow them in and seat themselves. The entire time they are all just looking at them and sneaking in pictures. When I was bringing a sandwich out to some dude, I saw him texting someone. I'm sitting in the same restaurant as Mark Zuckerberg. Great for business, but it was super weird to be surrounded by a bunch of people who act like a defining moment of their life is sitting in the same diner as someone famous. We didn't get a lot of terrible customers, but there were a few that stand out in memory. There was one mother with serious Karen vibes that sent fries back to the kitchen because we seasoned them with parsley. Her words to me were, "You're pretty young, right?" You don't have kids, so you wouldn't understand. He won't eat them because of the green stuff. I just smiled and nodded, but I was rolling my eyes in my mind. Oh my, you watched until the end? That's fucking awesome, dude. Thanks for watching.